all of a sudden 3 Sasquatch appeared to me in front of me, and they said, if you ask us, we will help you find a place. And I said, well, I didn't ask you because I didn't want to bother you some small thing. And he says, to us, it's not small. And he says, we want to help you. So, sorry, my cat is raising heck here. So I said, okay. I said, I want a cabin in a forested area in the foothills on a dirt road that's a dead-end road. I said, I want well water. I don't want these chemicals in my water. And I says, and I don't want to pay any more than $500 a month. The next day I had it.
Every damn time I try to take a nice quiet hike, there's always some human around to harsh my mellow. But that's all right. It's February, and that means it's Sasquatch season. This month, Through a Glass, Darkly will be going deep on all things Sasquatch. So sit down, tiny human, and watch. Otherwise, I will eat you.
I love Sasquatch season. You're not going to want to miss it all this month on Through a Glass Darkly.
Hello again. I'm here with Kewaunee Lasperitis. Kewaunee, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back.
Okay, so we left off, you're kind of talking about animals, recounted many of your stories. Let's kind of go back to some of the original questions. I think you said that there were 7 different species. Can you just quickly outline at least what they told you? Because this is what they told you, right?
Yes. Some are, they said, are small people, little people, and then some are medium-sized people, and some are giant people that are forest people that are all over the world in different places. That's what they told me. And the large ones are not Gigantopithecus, like the expert neophytes claim that it's got to be Gigantopithecus. The Sasquatch told me they have absolutely no connection with the anthropoid apes, and that, you know, there's even some people believe that or refer to the Sasquatch as North American great apes. And this is ridiculous. Again, there are people, a tribal people, not apes, not animals. These people are neophytes. They're naive, and they're good people. A lot of them are real good people, but they just are barking up the wrong tree. Why? Because they're not getting the communication. Why aren't they? Because they're chasing them. They're stalking the Sasquatch rather than going out with an open heart. If you go out with fear and you want to connect with them, it's not going to happen. If you're a negative person and you kick your dog and you're abusive to your family or something, and you go out in the forest to connect with the Sasquatch, it's not going to happen. They can read you. I was told by a researcher in Russia many, many years ago, several decades ago, that whenever they had an expedition ready in Moscow, they would organize it, but they'd lay out the map, and this is where we're going. Unbeknownst to them, unwittingly, on an unconscious level, they are telepathing to the beings, the forest people there, way up in the Ural Mountains and so on, that they're coming. So it's interesting in the valley where there's still some farmers, they're wilderness farmers, that till the fields, they see these almost all the time as standing at the edge of the woods watching them. But the day before the expedition arrived, they don't see anything. The expedition stays a few weeks, gets no information, and leaves. The day after they leave, the Amish people are back again. And because they know that what they're after, some of them have guns and cameras. And if you have a gun or a camera, they don't want anything to do with you. So this is it. Like I say, they're not Gigantopithecus. Now, there is a down in Texas, and I must admit, I can't remember the name of the river, but it has limestone tracks of dinosaurs. I have a complete book on it, and I just can't quite remember at the moment the name of the river. But when they found giant footprints, 24 inches long, of human footprints that looked just like Sasquatch, they told the anthropologists and zoologists and paleontologists at the universities around that area, none of these professors would come and look at it.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
Just they're armchair researchers, which are not true scientists. They need to wake up and start being really true scientists and go out in the field. But they're saying, oh no, it's been fabricated. They're phony facts that somebody chiseled out. However, that's not true. When there's a big slab that weighed a couple of tons, that it showed tracks of a dinosaur and that of I'm going to say the word Sasquatch because they told me it's them that we did this, in the limestone, that it's 65 million years old. So they're side by side, and the slab, after the footprints were made, either the Sasquatch were following this bipedal dinosaur, or the dinosaur was following the Sasquatch, trying to maybe eat him. So the slab later fell on top of this, so you could see the footprints on one end of this huge slab and then coming out the other end. So to disprove these professors that are just wildly speculating in a very subjective, non-scientific way, he managed to get a crane out there. I think it was a dentist. That was his hobby, was to examine these, and he wrote a book on it and took pictures and so on. I have it put away someplace. Now, I have a huge library. So when the crane lifted this slab up, there was the footprints that continued on. So there was no chiseling or anything because the slab fell, who knows, 65, 66 million years ago. So these are genuine tracks of dinosaurs with the Sasquatch people's footprints in the limestone deposits. And in the summertime, the water goes way down, so they were able to see and to examine and even take pictures up close of all these tracks of both dinosaurs and the human footprints. I call them human because I asked the Sasquatch about it. He says, yes, that was our people. We were there 65 million years ago. Now, the interesting part is that the Sasquatch claimed that they were bioengineered, which is basically genetically engineered. And that's a term they use back in the time of Lemuria out in the Pacific before it went under. And the friendly ETs gave them all this characteristics to survive in raw nature. So even though they're human, they have animal-like characteristics in order to survive in raw nature. So they can growl, they can scream, they can kill a deer with their hands easily, and so on. And I know a woman professor that was a geologist that taught at a college in North Seattle. And she later contacted me from Southern California that she took on a project for the government to collect and analyze some kind of geological stones, rocks, and so on in, I believe it was Death Valley. While she was there, she slept in the back of her four-wheel drive. So one night, it was real cold as she stepped outside, and 3 Sasquatch appeared there behind some bushes. And she could see their outlines and everything, and they started talking to her. She was Native American. In other words, she already had a philosophy of being one with nature and respecting all living things. In other words, spirituality has nothing to do with religion, even though some people who join religions become more spiritual. But spirituality simply means having respect for all living things, whether they're animals or plants, and respect for the whole environment, because they believe that Mother Earth is a living organism, which I believe as well. I was married to a Navajo woman. I worked for 2 different Native American agencies and so on. And a lot of my friends were shamans, just like myself. I'm a shaman. So she was talking to them, but it was freezing cold at night, but real hot during the day, like it is in all deserts. And she says to them, you people don't wear clothes. How do you stay warm? And she said they just laughed and laughed and laughed, but never answered her. So I asked them myself many years later, how come they can be in the desert, but also be in the high country, the alpine country, and still stay warm, especially in the winter? And the answer was, we can control our body temperature. Now, I know 2 situations with 2 people that I became friends with and trusted that had experiences. One man asked me, he wanted to connect down in Arizona. And so he sent me the maps. I told him where. I said, there's 11 Sasquatch here, but inside you're going to see a lot of spaceships, because there's a big hollowed out, almost like a citadel of where the ETs and the Sasquatch are working. A lot of this stuff, I don't know what they're doing. They've never showed it completely, other than they do collect minerals. And so he went out there, but it was a 4.5-hour drive going slow on a dirt road through the high desert. That meant when he arrived, there was a white female Sasquatch behind some bushes there, and he arrived during the daytime that he saw. So he knew he was in the right place, and he looked in this gigantic mesa. This is inside the mesa is this basically ET station. Now, and incidentally, they told me there's ET stations all over the world. Most of them are underwater in oceans and in deep water lakes that have been here for millions of years. They've been here, nothing new. And we said, oh, they just started coming. No, they've been here for millions of years. So that night, when he was laying in the back of his truck with a sleeping bag, he brought his summer bag because it was so hot during the day, and he didn't realize that at night it's going to be bitter cold. And so he got cold. He's laying there shaking. And I told him, if you have a problem, any kind of a problem, get bit by a snake or rattlesnake or something, to telepath to the Sasquatch. So he's laying there and he just wasn't sure what to do, but he telepathed and said, hey, you guys, I taught him the correct way to telepath. He said, hey, you guys, I'm cold. Can you help me out somehow? And he had no idea how. And in less than a minute, he started to warm up. And he became very comfortable warm. Then about 15 minutes later, he started to sweat because he got too hot. So he telepathed back to him, says, hey, you guys, can you turn down the heat? He said, I'm getting too hot. And they did, and made it comfortable, and he slept fine for the rest of the night. Then another time he went out there. Oh, incidentally, the first night there, he saw 2 spaceships that somehow disappeared inside of and spaceships are interdimensional too. They can go through solid rock, and they went inside the station. Right after that, a black helicopter came with no insignias on it, some black ops kind of secret stuff, and flew and circled around that area and then disappeared. Now, another time he went out there, he was driving down the road and he said, I'm going to take this side road and see what's out there. But he's driving and driving. It's the same thing, nothing for miles and miles. So he's going to turn around. So what did he do? He accidentally, backing up, went into the gutter and he couldn't get out. He was stuck. I mean, this is in the middle of nowhere. And he's never seen a car, truck, anything, anytime he's been out there. It's just too far in the middle of the high desert. So again, he telepathed. And in a few minutes, one of them said to him, do not look in the rearview mirror. I'll lift the back end and put it back on the road for you. For whatever reason, he didn't want my friend to see them. And instantly, the back end was lifted and put back on the road. Now, this friend, his name was Mac, refer to him as that, would come up. I lived at the time in a cabin that the Sasquatch found for me when I left North Seattle. I was 50 miles from Seattle in the foothills of the Cascades, the Washington Cascades. And they had a portal that the ETs built 125 feet into the forest from my front door so they could help me and give me guidance and stuff. And when I wrote my second book, they were there for me. So when Matt comes up to visit me, he'd stay for a few weeks and camp out and then drive back to Arizona where he lived. So on the way back, he went through the desert and he drove and drove, and finally he came to a general store that sold gas and it sold drinks and stuff and some munchy food. So he stopped there to take a rest. On the porch of this old general store in the middle of the desert were three people, a man, a woman, and a teenage girl. And the guy he recognized as being a movie star. And he told me he couldn't remember the guy's name. And the guy said, the movie star stopped him and said, excuse me. He says, I accidentally, when I got out of the car to take a break here with my family, I left the keys in there. And he says, I've been sitting here for several hours, but there's almost nobody stops. And I've asked everyone that's ever stopped here and nobody has it. So I said, well, sorry, I don't. So Mac went inside, got some iced tea and some other things. And when I was in there, he felt the Sasquatch around him that followed him back from my place, which they often do. And he said to the Sasquatch, will you help this man by unlocking the door for him, his door? And the Sasquatch says, because you asked and want to help someone else, we will do that. So when Mac walked outside, he looked at the guy and said, when you see me get into my truck and drive away, then check your door of your car. And the guy sat there looking puzzled, like, what are you talking about, you know? And he walked away. But when Mac walked by the guy's car, which was a big fancy car, he heard a click. He went and got in his truck, and when he was driving away, he looked, and the guy had the car door open, standing there scratching his head. So he didn't want any kudos for that, and because how is he going to explain all that, right? He didn't want to do that. So another person in Arkansas, two women were hiking, and the same thing happened.
Do you know which famous person this was?
No. He says he saw.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, he couldn't remember. He told me. So, but these two women went after an ice storm hiking in the Ozarks just for the day. But they didn't realize how cold it was because they're walking. Finally, they're starting to sweat a little bit. Then they got chilled really bad. And so one of the women had Sasquatch experiences with telepathy. And so she felt them around, that they had followed her. So she asked, she says, can you help us? We don't want to get hypothermal and so on. And so they did. They started to warm up right immediately. And so she thanked them, and they turned around and hiked back and didn't want to go any further. So these forest people are really wonderful people, but you have to not want to kill them. You don't want to take something from them, even a photograph. If you have that in mind, then they'll know if you have a camera or not, and then they won't have anything to do with you. So, but all these people have guns, cameras, and stuff. And some people have told me, one guy said, well, I go up in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and I've had lots of experiences there. And we started talking, and he said, well, I carry a 357 Magnum with me. I says, what for? Oh, he says, for bear and for mountain lion, especially mountain lion. I said, look, I've been in and out of wilderness areas all over the world and all over the United States. I said, I never carry a gun, never. And I said, I've never had a problem. And I said, if you want to have experiences, and he told me he carried a camera as well, but he said, I wouldn't harm a Sasquatch at all. I said, so what? You're carrying a gun. They don't know. They don't want anybody around with a gun. And then you carry a camera. And then you told me you have 2 or 3 other people with you in your expedition. I should go by yourself, no camera, no gun, and camp out and see what happens. So he did. A whole bunch of Sasquatch came right up to his tent. You could hear them thump, thump walking up. And I said, oh, what happened? He said, I don't know. I was so damn scared. He says, they were right there. I said, but that's what you said you wanted. And now you're afraid once they come up to the tent. So these people still don't get it, you know. Instead of saying, hey, thank you for coming and visiting me. My name is George or Bill or whatever, you know, what is your name? And you start introducing yourself. There are people, and they all have names. My guide is named Snowhawk. He's 10.5 feet tall. I've never had an argument with him, and I never will. Well, he's got a human face. Now, this is something that the so-called experts don't know. And they've never addressed it. But there's several races of beings out there. Now, some people report, gee, I saw it and it had a human face. And then another one would say, yeah, I saw a Sasquatch and it had an ape-like face. Well, which is it? Well, when I was living in the Cascades, 400 miles from here, and there were both Sasquatch and ancient ones there. The ancient ones have a round head, human face, and their arms are in proportion to their body, just like ours. The Sasquatch people have a sagittal crest or a peaked head, an ape-like face, even though they're not apes, and their arms go down to their knees. That's the difference. And incidentally, the ancient ones told me that the friendly ETs that bioengineered them around 200 million years ago, that's what they said, took DNA from them to bioengineer us, the humans. This has all been hidden. The government knows about this, but all this has been hidden from us. So why the Darwinian theory became so popular that everybody believes in it? I don't. We didn't come from monkeys. That's crazy stuff. Why? They've never really found the true missing link, because there isn't any. Many of these different people, like the Neanderthals, were also bioengineered and dropped off there. So the different stages, this is from the ETs. I asked a Sasquatch once, and I said this deliberately. I said, are you the caveman that scientists talk about? Are you the missing link? And he chuckled. And he said, no, you people are the missing link. You don't know where you've come from or where you're going. This is what he said. And so all these different hominids were experimental down here, and including the Sasquatch people themselves. I don't know what other ones may be out there, other than I know they talk about the dog-faced man, which I don't know a lot about, but I'm not afraid of them at all. If I met one in the forest, I would introduce myself and say to them, thank you for, it was nice to meet you. God bless you and your people. And I'd start a conversation with them, not run or whatever. People, I don't know how many naive people have said, oh, it was going to kill me. It was walking towards me and it was going to kill me. I said, no, it wasn't. Oh, yes, it was. I said, no, it wasn't. I said, they can run up to 70 miles an hour. I said, they could catch you right away if that's what their purpose was. I said, if they were going to kill you, you wouldn't be talking about it right now because you'd be dead. I said, they don't go around killing people like they've been told. Now, there's another phenomena here. First of all, in India, there's in the Bhagavad Gita, in a sense, their Bible for Hinduism, there's Hanuman, the big monkey man. Well, there were several of them, and these were a kind of a Sasquatch type way back, and they had incredible powers and abilities, and with the flying carpets and stuff, they had some kind of a device that I guess looked like it or something, and that's where the mythical flying carpet things comes from. But this matches up to what the Sasquatch said, and because it was passed down through oral tradition, and then, I don't know, maybe 8,000 years, 6 or 8,000 years ago, the Hindus started to write it down, and they formed all these books, and Hanuman is in one of these books from the Bhagavad Gita. So, talking about, they call it Hanuman, but these Sasquatch types that were very evolved, incredibly evolved. So, yeah, they talked about Atlantis and Lemuria millions of years ago and so on. And they said something to the effect that when they bioengineered the humans, we were told to help the humans to survive. So we started teaching the humans when they went out into the forest to settle. We were friends with them all the time and teaching them. He said that was one of our primary jobs or missions. And he says, then a new ruler came into Atlantis that was evil. And some of the humans that were produced went against the Sasquatch people and wanted to get rid of them. So, again, I don't know the exact details of that, but he said then that's when we disappeared and went deeper into the wilderness and became a myth. So, and it all makes sense to me because they're helping people. They're helping me. They've helped so many other people. A friend of mine had cancer, and I gave him the herbal formula that was given to me by the ETs, and he had liver cancer, and he took it for one day, and he says, I don't want to take all this stuff. It tastes terrible. So his wife called me, we were talking, and I asked how he was doing, and she said, he won't take it. She said, I won't force him. But she says, you know, he's got so many months left to live. So they lived in the wilderness, this couple. He was a retired professor, and they both had master's degrees. And so I asked the Sasquatch, please, these are my good friends, and could you go to him and heal him? And 5 days later, his wife called me up, and we were talking. She says, you know, Ray just came back from the hospital for a checkup, and they can't find a trace of cancer in his body, and everybody's perplexed, including us. We don't know what happened. And I said, Mary, I said, I'm asked the Sasquatch, they had Sasquatch coming around their place. And whenever I went out there, and this is deep wilderness, they would talk to me and welcome me there and so on. And I said, I asked them to go if they would hear Ray. And she said, well, he's perfectly fine. So later on, she called me back and said, Ray wants to thank you for what you did for him. And several years later, down the pike, whenever we were talking, she said, Ray is still so grateful that you sent the Sasquatch to him that healed his cancer. So this sounds like a fairy story or a science fiction thing, but it's not. This is the real deal. This is the truth. If people want to not believe it, I don't care. That's their problem. If they don't believe it, then they're not evolved enough to understand that these things are out there. I mean, if they're millions of years ahead of us, well, wait a minute, they're not going to be playing tiddlywinks and doing some simple things, like we do. They're going to be evolved. And so they are, and they are. So anyway, this is a part of that. Let me see. Do you have any questions?
Quick question. Yeah. So the portals that they use, is that a technology or is that just pure consciousness?
Both. They can produce a portal. Now, when I lived in the foothills of the Cascades outside of Seattle, I was looking for a place in the wilderness. And I told them, I said, I couldn't find one. And I'd already told that I would be moving out of the house in 60 days. And 6 weeks went by and I still couldn't find a place. And it was every day I was looking. So I came back frustrated from looking for a place. And I wanted to get out of Seattle back into the forest because I love the wilderness. I was raised in the wilderness. And so there were, all of a sudden, 3 Sasquatch appeared to me in front of me. And they said, if you ask us, we will help you find a place. And I said, well, I didn't ask you because I didn't want to bother you some small thing. And they says, to us, it's not small. And he said, we want to help you. So, sorry, my cat is raising heck here. So I said, okay. I said, I want a cabin in a forested area in the foothills on a dirt road that's a dead-end road. I said, I want well water. I don't want this chemicals in my water. And I says, and I don't want to pay any more than $500 a month. The next day I had it. And I came back and I was so puzzled. And I started making a huge salad. And I was standing looking out the window of the house that I was going to be leaving. And all of a sudden, I saw the cabin that I had just talked to the landlady and stuff. And with my car, and I saw myself inside the car in a 12-foot Sasquatch standing by the passenger door closer to the front wheel. And he was pointing to the cabin. And all of a sudden, I felt somebody in the room, and I turned around, and there was a huge Sasquatch standing behind me in the kitchen. And he said, now that you know that's where you're supposed to move, be at peace. And he dematerialized. So I was there for 11 years, but they had built a portal there. The ETs did. Both ancient ones and Sasquatch were there, and even the dogface. The dogface people were protecting the portal from any negative entities coming through to bother me or harass me. I didn't know this. This is all new to me until they explained this. So people would come over and, and like a friend came over to visit. Whenever she did, she slept on the couch and I slept up in the loft. And we used to go hiking together periodically. We only get together about 3-4 times a year. And she was like a daughter to me. And one day I was there and she told me how sick she was, really ill. And she was incapacitated and started to vomit and everything. So it was close to the time to go to bed. So I asked the Sasquatch, would you please come and heal her? And they didn't answer me, but they said they heard me. So I went up in the loft and she went to bed. But as soon as I shut off the light, she didn't tell me this till the next morning, that an ET, when the light went off, an ET was standing over her. And he put his arms back and forth like this, and she went out. But when she woke up in the morning, she was perfectly fine. And here she went to bed terribly ill. So anyway, they were there. And one time I went to have my car, the front end of the line, because on this dirt road is bumpy and everything. And so I had to go into North Seattle. So I drove in and everything, and I had made an appointment. And I set it down. They said, come back in an hour, it'll be done. So I went and got a sandwich, came back in an hour, and they said, we haven't even worked on it yet. I said, why not? They said, the master mechanic said, come out into the main place where we're working. And he had it up on a lift. He says, when I put it up on the lift, I reached over and touched I forgot what they call it. It's a part that steers the front end. He said, when he touched it, it fell off in his hand. He said, I don't know how you ever got here. He said, you're lucky you didn't take the freeway. I said, I did take the freeway. He said, how did you get here without getting into an accident? He said, this wasn't even hooked up. There was nothing there. And I knew, but I didn't tell him. He said, do you want us to fix this before realigning your cars? I said, go ahead. But when I got back home and went in the house, I went and sat down in my office there, and I'm sitting at the desk, and immediately an ancient one walked right through the door and walked up to my desk. And he says, we were the ones that telekinetically held on to that piece so you wouldn't get into an accident and die. And as I'm thanking them, tears were in my eyes for saving my life. So this is things that they can do. And like I said, they found that place for me. And when I couldn't find anything, I had it the next day. How is that possible? They're that evolved that they know. So all these things have changed my life a lot. They're wonderful. They refer to me as family now. As a matter of fact,
actual physical beings, or are they plasma or?
No, they're physical. They go potty like us and so on, and they procreate like us and everything. There were so many different situations that I experienced. One of them, many years ago, I think it was 1989. Yes, 1989. I was engaged to someone, and she abruptly broke up, and I couldn't figure out why, and I just fell into a depression. And one day, when I was in the wilderness in my vehicle, I had seen what I considered a female tracks in the snow 6 months before, but there was tiny tracks beside it. It looked like a female with a young. So while I'm driving, this beautiful ancient one, they have human faces, and some of them are absolutely gorgeous, appeared right in my window. And she had green eyes and hair all over her body except for her face. And she says, dear friend, would you come up to the mountain where you interact with us and make love to me? And I said, right now I'm busy helping someone. And she said, it's good to help others, but I am lonely. I would like you to come up to make love to me. And I was at that time, very depressed, 2 weeks before I had a broken engagement, and really didn't have an interest. Thinking about it now, I probably should have done it just for science, you know? But actually, I would have learned a lot if I'd have gone. But she said that was her child, that her parents were angry with her, and that she came through the portal. I found the portal there, and I would visit and talk to ETs and stuff through the portal. This is in a wilderness area on the side of this mountain. So now they'll have the same amount of chromosomes, 46 chromosomes, just like humans. So they can have babies just like us, you know, it's not a problem. So I was told this story by a woman who was a UFO researcher with MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And she said that she went out and investigated because there were spaceships being seen around this small lake about 35 or 40 miles southeast of Seattle in the wilderness. And there was a man out there that she met that lived in a cabin. He was divorced and he was 60 years old, he told her. She interviewed him and he said he started to see spaceships over the lake, and a tube would come down into the lake to draw up the water. And the next day when he went out, he noticed that the water in the lake was low. Again, it was a small lake. But he also was seeing what he thought were Sasquatch at a distance several times. But they weren't, they were ancient ones. How do I know? Because one night, as he told the woman in the interview, that there was a knock on the door. And when he opened the door, there was a woman, almost 6 foot tall, that had hair all over her body, but a beautiful face, a human face. And she started to talk to him telepathically. And they talked for a while, and she says, I'd like you to make love to me. So they went to bed, made love, and when she got through, she got out of bed, turned and walked right through the wall. Immediately, didn't go out the door, walked right through the wall. And then a month went by, and there was a knock on the door again in the evening, and when he opened the door, it was the same woman. And she pointed to her stomach, and she said to him telepathically, "It took," and smiled and turned and walked away. So I met somebody in Oklahoma that was having the same experience with an ancient one, a woman that would spend the night with him and so forth. So these things, if I had not talked to this person, I would never have known because he wasn't advertising it. None of these people were advertising it. So it may sound, one scientist said, it sounds like bestiality. No, there are people. It was not a Sasquatch. These were the ancient ones that, again, were closest to humans, that they took the DNA from them to make us, other than we don't have the giantism, we don't have their strength, we don't have hair all over our body, or all of the attributes, psychic attributes that they have. So, but they took some of their DNA from there in order to genetically engineer us. And that's what they told me. So people have to decide, what's real and what isn't for them. But when I asked, how come, what about God and stuff? They said, God commanded that the ETs do this. So one woman in Texas, who was very religious, asked a female ancient one down there, she says, do you know about Jesus Christ? And the ancient one, whose name was Halodi, who I befriended, and Halodi said, you mean the one who walks on water? Was her answer. And then she said that her grandmother used to sing songs to her in the evening, and they would pray. And I said, well, how did they know that? And she said, well, she used to secretly be around the red-bearded people years ago when the red-bearded people came up the Mississippi. Who were the red-bearded people? They were the Celtics. So, I don't know, from Ireland. So there's a lot of Celtic writings and characters on stone that's been seen all over New England and other places. And science poo-poos that. But America is far older, and people have been here for millions of years. American science is so infantile, and they're so rigid that, they only want to believe certain things, and they don't want to listen to the indigenous peoples. The Native American people knew so much. We would have learned. We would have been more evolved, and we would have respected the environment and not start clear-cutting and dumping everything. Right now, the whole planet's polluted. They've been dumping nuclear waste into our oceans. Plastic, years ago, back in the 60s and 70s, plastic was a big deal. Hey, now they discovered these microscopic plastic break off from inside of, for example, plastic water bottles and stuff. And that doesn't belong in our body. Are they causing disease? I'm not sure. I know that heavy metals cause disease. They've been spraying herbicides and pesticides on food. I only buy organic food for years and years and years. And a lot of people made fun of me. Oh, it's the same. There's no difference. Of course there's a difference. The difference is not only is they're not poison in these that accumulate in the human body and cause disease, they attack the nervous system, and they cause also cancer. They cause, in effect, Parkinson's disease and so on. These people say, oh, we don't know where all this is coming from. Hey, wake up. This stuff has never been there before. So, and that's where all this is from. They just did a study a few years ago. People who live in cities that breathe in those fine particles of heavy metals and chemicals, plus drink chemical-laden water, have high, very high rates of cancer, of all kinds of neurological diseases, plus the strokes and heart attacks from these chemicals and heavy metals that are in the cities. So who knows that? Doctors don't know that. If they do, what are they going to do about it? I mean, they're still prescribing more chemicals. They're artificial. They don't belong in the body. They just accumulate. They'll destroy your liver and destroy your kidneys. And many, many people I met. So I know my wife has this, and she's dying because she's taken 11 different prescription drugs, and the doctor says it's from that. Why take it? She's supposed to be killing herself, and she killed herself basically because she believed the doctors are gods. The old saying, what's the difference between God and a doctor? God doesn't think he's a doctor. So, but all this ties into the Sasquatch people. They want to eat only pure things, and they told me they were glad that I eat only organic foods and stuff. Of course, I eat out once in a while. So every year or two, I do cleanses, heavy metal cleanses and chemical cleanses to get rid of that from my body. So, I had cancer twice. I don't need it anymore. I don't want it. And I'll be 83 years old this year. I'm still here, and all the doctors that said I'd be dead, they're dead. So they can keep their chemicals. I'll do with the Sasquatch and the ETs that are more aware. I just follow a lot of their regimens, and I'm fine. Hell, I'm not married anymore, but if I met the right person, I would, and then settle down and start a family. I've got the energy.
You said that they told you that they bioengineered humanity.
Yes.
Why did they do that? Like, if they had something that was superior for several million years, why would they need us?
Well, the Sumerian people claim that all these gods came down. They weren't gods, they were ETs. And the same as in Greece, when they said, Mount Olympus, there's Thor up there and the god, and he wasn't a god, he was an ET. But they said that we were supposed to be slaves to mine gold. Whether that's true or not, people argue that sometimes, but there's gaps in some of this. I don't know everything, and I don't pretend to. But did they make us because they needed slaves? I'm not sure. But I do know that the centaurs and other man animals that are mythical in Greece were bioengineered by super evolved ETs. So that's, people say, oh, that's just myth. But it's not, because there's, what about, I've never asked them this, but as far as mermaids, were they bioengineered and released down here as well as an experiment? There's claims, and I mean written down by priests that were on board ships and stuff, that saw not just one, but a whole colony of these so-called mermaids and mermen. So there's some connection with evolved ETs. And this down here, as far as I can see, it's been an experimental place. The bad thing about it is the stupid humans have destroyed this planet, and now they want to have World War III to really do it in. I mean, these people are mentally ill. My feeling is this: they lack all this negative stuff that's going on in the world with the big companies, Dow Chemical and so on, that use sprays for chemicals when there's other means to handle parasites. Also, the drug industry, the pharmaceutical place, everything is money. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and somehow they don't have enough money. I mean, this is ridiculous. So why would people do that? Well, this is my interpretation. I feel that they lack spirituality, and it's not being taught in schools to respect the environment and so on. All the things that we could have learned from the Native American tribes that we destroyed and attacked and killed. And yes, they attacked us, but we were destroying their sacred lands and killed all the buffalo off and all this stuff. I mean, it's crazy stuff. That's psychopathic. And there's a lot of psychopaths running this world and many different governments. And they are psychopathic. In the Bible, it says, they're at the end times, Satan's going to infiltrate as many people as possible. Well, how does that work? If you have negative thoughts, you lower your vibrational frequency, and you attract other low vibrational frequencies, which are demons. If you meditate, if you think love, and this is not an airy fairy thing, but if you think spiritual love, I'm not talking romantic love, that's nothing wrong with that either, but spiritual love, and spirituality means respect for all living things, for trees, for insects, for all kinds of animals and people. And if they had done this, a few hundred years ago, we may not have been in this situation, because people would say, oh, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do it to respect the environment. But they don't even respect people. People are dying of all these diseases that are man-made diseases. Like I said, all the pollution. So we're not an evolved species at all. We're at the bottom, we're slime at the bottom of the barrel. Why am I saying it? Because the planet's all polluted. I mean, completely, on these isolated islands that people don't even live on. When people stop there just to rest or to see what's there, the beaches are loaded with plastic and garbage and crap. There's so much of it because people dump it in the oceans. They have no respect for the fish, for the marine life and everything. And so many animals are going extinct all the time because of us. Why? We take away their environment. They don't have enough environment. And when people are after the Sasquatch, a Sasquatch might have had 200 acres or 500 acres they claim for themselves, even though they may go outside that during the salmon runs and stuff to fish, to get fish for their family and stuff. But researchers go into their area and they get chased out. Well, wait a minute. I don't want to wake up in the morning. I have 12 acres here. I don't want to wake up in the morning with somebody uninvited has a tent right outside my door and he's got a gun. Hey, that doesn't look friendly to me. I'll call the sheriff and have him removed. I don't want him here. If he called me up or wanted to be friendly, and which people do, and I welcome them here when they do that. So you do the same with a Sasquatch because they're a people. I have a way, I tell people what to say when they telepath to the Sasquatch people. So there's a certain formula, you might say, and that's what you do. You ask them to come to you. You go to the edge of their property, and I light tobacco and ask permission. Can I go into this area? I'm asking permission. So that's what you do. And like I said, the whole world's destroyed because of humans that are not spiritual enough to recognize what they're doing, especially the corporations, the big corporations that, again, just don't seem to have enough money. They got to keep up their psychopathic ways and destroy the environment.
Any final words for the audience, Kewaunee?
Yes, if there's anyone that needs my help, they can email me either because of an illness or because they want to learn to telepath and connect with the Sasquatch people. Some people I will not do it for. Some people I turn down because their intentions were not pure. But they can go to sasquatchpeople@hotmail.com. It's a hot subject, Hotmail. All one word, sasquatchpeople@hotmail.com. Or they can even call me at 509-590-0415. That's 509-590-0415. I'm devoted to God and to helping people. And if you need help or you want to be around more evolved people like the Sasquatch and ancient ones, contact me and I'll be happy to work with you. I've helped hundreds of people, thousands at this point, actually, over the years.
Well, thank you, Kewaunee. It's been an absolute pleasure. And are you sure you want to give out your phone number like that, though?
Yeah, I have no fear. And if people wanted to contact me, it's perfectly fine. That's my mission in life, is to educate the public. So you're doing me a service and doing them a service at the same time by allowing me to do that.
All right. Well, thank you very much, my friend. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Trust me on that. I'm not a doctor.
And, well, thank you again.
And as they say in Star Wars, may the Sasquatch be with you.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you, my friend.
Yeah, God bless. Thank you again for having me.
If you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you could get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of a expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's two options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site. And there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much and keep watching. I really appreciate it.